All the senseless violence. I don't understand its appeal.
Well, we don't expect you to, Mom.
If cartoons were meant for adults, they'd put them on in prime time.
Ever since the Flintstones debate in 1960, primetime television animation got its first exposure. This show proved that animation can be targeted for adults and still be enjoyable. Following that was later Contemporaries, which pushed for more edgy content. Then came the likes of The Simpsons, which marked the return of primetime animation. Many networks tried to cash in that same identity, and some have either lived or died. Others had survived to this day, and others are beloved, but some never even became series. Almost everyone knows King of the Hill, Bob's Burgers, Beavis and Butthead, and every Seth MacFarlane show, but others get left behind or cancelled after one season, or 13 episodes. And that's what I'm looking at for this review. I chose 7 shows targeted for mature audiences that didn't last very long, either due to ratings, poor network treatment, or just not being very good. There are other videos detailing these shows, but I like to add my 2 cents and give my own perspective. Some of these shows I've only seen snippets of, but never paid close attention to. So with that out of the way, let's look at these forgotten adult shows. After serving as showrunners for seasons 3 and 4 of The Simpsons, Al Jean and Mike Reiss created The Critic, a show that follows the adventures and daily life of movie critic Jay Sherman in the city of New York. Also a heads up, a good chunk of people who worked on The Simpsons also worked on these shows, so expect me to say Simpsons multiple times. Jean and Reiss had a contract with James L. Brooks to create a show for the ABC network. What originated as backstage shenanigans of the Today's Show became an animated sitcom. The show in particular shares many of the same crew as The Simpsons, including writers, producers, and animation crew. David Silverman designed the titular character Jay Sherman, and Rich Moore was the supervising director. That also extends to voice actors, such as Nancy Cartwright, Doris Grau, and of course, John Lovitz. He's been a recurring guest in The Simpsons, and hams up his performance while bringing other emotions out of Jay.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
The art direction has a beautiful watercolor depiction of New York, and the characters have slightly more realistic, although sometimes grotesque designs. Everett Peck, creator of Duckman, also handled some designs like Doris. The main hook of The Critic is its movie parodies. The Simpsons was definitely no stranger to pop culture references, but The Critic fully emphasizes them. The creators picked movies that were relevant at the time, but also timeless. Sometimes the show can accidentally predict the future.
Tonight I'll be reviewing Home Alone 5.
The characters themselves are charming enough to carry a story. Jay is intelligent, but an unlucky loser. Many flashbacks depict him having failed romances. His family, the judgmental mother, the airheaded father, and the level-headed sister give insight into why he turned out the way he did. His son Marty idolizes him so much that he's practically a mini version of him. Aside from movie parodies, the show even mocked or guest starred other famous critics, such as Gene Shalit and Siskel and Ebert. The latter pair even co-starred in an episode that deconstructed their partnership. The show was cancelled midway through the first season, but would be moved later to the Fox network. The crossover with The Simpsons, A Star is Born, was made to promote the show being on Fox, which Matt Groening disapproved of, feeling it was a shameless publicity stunt. But regardless, The Critic got a second season. The show was cancelled again in 1995. There were some web shorts around the early 2000s, but they lacked the humor and charm of the original. They were animated in Flash, and just referenced recent or upcoming movies instead of satirizing them. I feel like a minor issue with the show is that unless you're a film enthusiast that understands the references, the context isn't as funny, especially to someone who has little to no knowledge of these films, or actors. That said, with a show about a grown man not being afraid to speak his mind despite criticism, I feel like The Critic might be more true to life than we give it credit for. If you're looking for a show that contains the early Simpsons heart and humor, give this show a watch. Where else can you find John Lovitz confidently being able to state,
"It stinks, it stinks, it stinks"? Yes, Mr. Sherman, everything stinks.
Kevin is suspended for the rest of today.
"1999 saw the debut of many primetime animated series, including the next show on the list, Mission Hill. The series follows Andy French, an aspiring cartoonist who lives in the metropolitan city of Cosmopolis and works in retail, but his life changes when his younger brother Kevin moves in with him. After serving as showrunners for seasons 7 and 8 of The Simpsons, Bill Oakley and Joshua Weinstein began developing the show in 1997. It was pitched to the WB network for 18 episodes. They wanted to create a cast that's completely different from The Simpsons, mostly people between the ages of 10 to 35 living in an urban city, specifically the hipster and gentrification part of the city. Another point of the show was to satirize topics that haven't been covered by The Simpsons, such as youth culture, alternative lifestyle, MTV, etc. Firstly, the show looks gorgeous. The inspiration for its art direction and design were underground comics such as 8-Ball. The characters were designed by Lauren McMullen, an animation director known for her work on The Simpsons and Avatar: The Last Airbender. I especially love the choices of bright, neon colors. They always set the mood or tone of a scene, be it morning or night, and the characters even have different shades to complement the time of day. The characters sport very thick outlines, similar to the likes of Daria. Other design quirks I admire are various blinking you'll miss posters or sight gags, how rapidly the movements are animated, or subtle ways the characters emote, like Andy having X's on his eyes or Gus becoming embarrassed. Every episode ends with a special stylized production credit that features the characters. Speaking of, Andy French is a snarky, self-centered slacker who's sick of his dead-end job and wants to invest in his dream for cartooning. His younger brother Kevin is a goody two-shoes nerd that plays by the rules, whose experience in the city is brand new to him. Andy's street smarts and Kevin's book smarts balance each other out. They share that Drake and Josh energy, especially when they can't go one moment without getting in each other's nerves. Nevertheless, the chemistry and history between the two brothers show how they have each other's backs. I feel one can relate to both of the French brothers, with Andy feeling like he's stuck in a rut, who's struggling to make his dream a reality, or Kevin learning to have an independent life without his parents. The supporting characters, however, I didn't find to be very strong. The only standouts are Gus and Wally, one of the first animated gay couple to be portrayed in a positive light. So much so, the show even won a GLAAD award for Gus and Wally. Only 2 episodes premiered on the WB with low ratings. The network then chose to air the show in the summer of 2000, but with little promotion, likely due to the channel finding its niche with teenage girls. It was cancelled around that time too. However, it got picked up by Cartoon Network for their 2002 Adult Swim lineup. This left 5 episodes scripted, but never animated. They're only available online as animatics or scripts. That's too bad, because it looks like the creators had ideas to shake up the status quo. If you're looking for a show that captures the struggles of being a young, independent adult, I recommend Mission Hill. It's a show that's ahead of its time and true to life.
Why are they putting a sombrero on a beaver?
I think you have your answer.
Our third show coming up on the list is The Oblongs, a show about a family that lives in a toxic swamp who received deformities due to nuclear waste being dumped from a rich family's careless attitudes. The show was co-created by Jace Richdale, a former co-executive producer of The Simpsons, and Angus Oblong. The show itself is based off his book titled Creepy Susie and 13 Other Tragic Tales for Troubled Children. Naturally, the characters featured in the show appear in the book. The aim of the show was to poke fun on social commentary towards the caste system. People at the top have power, the lowly commoners are at the bottom. There's also commentary on raising kids or environmental issues. Despite the commentary and occasional edginess, there's still a heartfelt aspect behind each story. The family, despite their oddities, love each other very much and often stick up for each other. That's something that you don't always see in adult cartoons. I classify the main characters as a band of misfits. Bob Oblong is the limbless 1950s fatherly blob who always tries to keep a positive attitude. Pickles, an alcoholic and addicted smoker, is as caring and supportive as any mother would be. Conjoined twins Biff and Chip are a pair of gay and straight teenage brothers. Beth, who has a pickle-like growth sticking from her head, is sweet one minute but bratty the next. The one I relate to the most is Milo, a medicated kid who has every social disorder classified.
What about your attention deficit disorder? Milo!
As much as I almost want to hug this kid for his miseries, I felt he took the center stage too often, leaving other family members off the wayside. I also like the various ways the supporting characters were deformed. Peggy, who has no lower jaw, spits all her lines. Creepy Susie is a goth who delivers black comedy. And Mikey has flabby ass cheeks. This family and friend dynamic amongst his band of weirdos is something I appreciate. It kind of reminds me of the Addams Family, in a way. Going back to humor, this show is genuinely hilarious at times. Like whenever the show did something unapologetically brutal, or have the characters flat out swear, I laughed. However, there are some jokes I could see someone finding offensive or tasteless. The voice cast is also top notch. You have well-known actors like Will Ferrell, Gene Smart, and Billy West. But then you have actors I've never heard of before, like openly gay comedian Leah Delaria, who voices Helga. It's funny to hear the voice of Bobby Hill and Spinelli from Recess say this.
Oh, anyway, my mom says bitch gotta go.
The Oblongs was cancelled due to the WB failing to find an audience. It was picked up by Cartoon Network for a 2002 Adult Swim lineup, which is exactly what happened to the previous show. I wish there was a few more episodes to flesh out this cast, especially the girl with a bird face. Because the message about how these outcasts are thankful for who they are, despite their limitations or disabilities, is inspiring to some. I might be jumping the gun too soon, but this is probably my favorite of the shows I've watched so far. Did you know that the first 3 shows mentioned had animation produced by the same company, Film Roman?
Coincidence? I think not.
What up? I'm Jay, and this is my hetero life mate, Silent Bob. Welcome to our palatial Hollywood estate. I bet you're wondering how 2 scumbags can afford such a place. Well, I'll tell you, our fat Clerks Animated cash.
Here's what's probably the shortest run of any show I've seen. Clerks Animated, based on the movie Clerks by Kevin Smith. It centers around the daily lives of 2 snarky video store clerks who criticize their customers. I've never seen or heard of the movie before, so I watched a few clips for a comparison to the show, and I fairly enjoyed what I saw. It's about as raunchy and vulgar as any adult 90s movie can get. The movie itself has had a cult following and launched Kevin Smith's career. A TV sitcom was filmed in 1995 and produced by Touchstone Television, but this never got picked up. 5 years later, we got Clerks the Animated Series, airing on ABC. Smith and the other crew members wanted to do a Simpsons-like universe, full of spontaneous pop culture references and cameos. The world is much zanier and more cartoony, a sharp contrast to the cynical tone of the 1994 movie. There are plots parodying movies or television shows, including a Bad News Bears adventure, or a clip show where the characters flash back to things that never happened.
As for you, Dante, don't let that door shut.
The humor is also self-aware of its surroundings and parodies, which is in tune with the show's nature. However, these kinds of gags can be hit or miss for me. The core run episode is riddled with running gags that get drawn out, ending in a nonsensical anime sequence. On a lighter note, the actors faithfully reprised their roles, Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson as Dante and Randall respectively. Dante is the straight man, while Randall is the laid-back slacker. They share the same snarky banter as the movie, although I found the way Randall embarrasses or undermines Dante to be questionable. The duo of Jay and Silent Bob, on the other hand, have their own escapades, or sometimes they are tied into the plots. The art direction in this show is much like a comic book, with black shadows and flat colors. The characters are also faithfully designed after their movie counterparts, thanks to designer Steven Silver, who designed characters for Danny Phantom, the Netflix Giant Test Revival, and Kim Possible, the latter of which also shares many crew members. 6 episodes were produced, but only 2 aired before its cancellation. This was the result of low ratings, being aired out of order, and struggling to find an audience. Despite this, all 6 episodes were released on DVD, and the 4 remaining were burnt off Comedy Central. Back then, the UPN network offered Smith and his team 12 episodes, but they chose ABC, a decision they soon regretted. The show was produced by Miramax, who was owned by Disney at the time, so technically this is Disney property. Kevin Smith teased a revival in 2013, but this never went anywhere. However, in 2020, Smith once again teased the show returning on Hulu. Nothing has come since then, but I'm curious as to what this results in. Clerks Animated has been ranked highly by others, and I like to see Smith and his team push the boundaries of this universe even further.
Hey, Naya stinker. Nugga nugga nooch.
This tiny dynamo has been trained to do all the grocery shopping, use an automated teller machine, and drive the kids to school.
Stupid dog.
After talking about shows I enjoyed, now for my least favorite show so far. A show told from the perspective of a dog from a neglectful family. Family Dog. The show is based off an animated short by Brad Bird, of Pixar fame, for Steven Spielberg's anthology series, Amazing Stories. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. It just felt mean-spirited towards the canine, as the family either insults or shows malice to him. So imagine that for a TV show. The family themselves act so heartless and cruel. The parents are negligent and constantly arguing, the son is the malicious brat, and the daughter has an annoying one-track mind. Even when they do show concern towards the dog, it feels half-hearted, since they go right back to showing little care for him. It's like you put the negative traits of The Simpsons front and center. The pacing in these stories feels drawn out, with sequences that only exist just to pad out the runtime. The music scored by Danny Elfman and Steve Bartek, however, is a nice touch. The animation is a mixed bag for me. It was produced by Nelvana, the same company who produced Beetlejuice and The Magic School Bus, and it's cool to see Tim Burton's style in 2D. The killers can have very expressive reactions or fluid movements, but other times they can move very sluggishly. Animation errors such as lip sync were noticeable. The quality of the show was likely due to deadlines and animation problems. 13 episodes were ordered, but the number was shortened to 10. Steven Spielberg and Tim Burton were credited as executive producers, but Brad Bird didn't think the premise would work as a TV series. You know, I think he was onto something. It was rushed into production for a 1991 spring release, but due to several production issues for Nelvana Fix, costs were added, and CBS burned out the show in the summer of 1993, 2 years after its set premiere. Family Dog was packed along with Fish Police and Capital Critters to capitalize on The Simpsons' success. And long story short, they didn't last very long.
Your stupid show just got canceled.
The only recognitions this show got were a Super Nintendo game and several VHS tapes. Otherwise, critics panned the show for its crude production values and crass humor. I myself can't recommend this show to anyone. Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog pretty much sums up this show.
Stupid dog! You made me look bad!
Looks like we're heading to Miami. Let's go Flamingo.
Another show that I wasn't too big on was Spy Groove, which centers on two agents attempting to foil the plans of the villain of the week. This was one of MTV's few animated shows that fell by the wayside, and I can kinda see why. The show itself is a parody of spy tropes in movies, most notably James Bond, with all the gadgets, the chief, the villains, and lasers. The theme song is even stylized in the form of Mr. Bond. It's like if Spy Fox were for adults. In terms of art direction, the show combines the varied color palettes from Mission Hill with the sharp, angular designs of Clerks Animated. Animator Glenn Hansen handled the designs and art direction. But on the other hand, the show uses limited animation with minimal lip sync, stills of characters, and choppy movements that look like they were animated in Flash or After Effects. As it turns out, the limited animation was intentional. It's like a throwback to classic animated action shows, including fight scenes in the style of 60s Batman. The humor though is pretty flat to me. The two main leads, who are named Agent Number 1 and Agent Number 2 by the way, are interchangeable with how suave and nonchalant they react in situations. The main draw for this duo is witty banter that often come into play at the episode's climax. In terms of pacing, this show has the opposite problem of Family Dog. The episodes move too fast for events to sink in. The focus on the show is mostly dialogue, and there are times where the plot suddenly stops just for some exchanges. However, there are some decent touches, such as the narrator. His manner of speaking is always dramatic, as he opens each act as parts for an action-packed special. He describes the gadgets as if they were commercial products. The main duo's banter continues during the credits, which does provide some decent ad-libbing by the voice actors. There's also commentary and random appearances of famous celebrities. The locations of the villains are all diverse, taking place around the world, from an Egyptian disco queen draining water for a water park, or a Spanish performer faking his own death for publicity. There's even an amount of returning enemies. I couldn't find any behind the scenes info about this show, or decent quality footage for that matter, but if I'm being honest, I found the presentation to be dull, and nothing interesting really stood out to me, aside from a few funny moments. If you want a show that's a better parody of spies and secret agents, go watch stuff like Martin Mystery, The Secret Show, or Kim Possible. And that's another nod to that show. But let's end this video on a high note with the last show on this list, a show that just came back from the dead last year.
Check this out. G-Spot rocks the G-Spot. G-Spot rocks the G-Spot.
Wow, that rhymed.
Clone High centers around teenage clones of famous historical figures, and all the shenanigans and tribulations of high school. This is a show that seems to be beloved by many. This show was the creation of Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, the producers behind Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, The Lego Movie, The Last Man on Earth, Mitchells vs. the Machines, and Into the Spider-Verse. Needless to say, these guys have a rather impressive portfolio. The idea about clowns going to college, later high school, originated from when the pair were in high school themselves. After a failed Fox pitch, MTV picked up the show. The show is a parody of teen sitcoms such as Dawson's Creek. Every episode is narrated like a soap opera, with dramatic moments and cliffhangers afoot. Unlike the previous entry, Spy Groove, the jokes in Clone High are properly built up or have great payoffs. The show is very self-aware of its cliches and manages to subvert them in unexpected ways. The voice actors put so much energy and emotion into their characters. I found myself bursting out of laughter for Principal Scudworth the most.
Ma'am, I believe this lit stick of dynamite belongs to you.
Just like Oblongs, some of these jokes are straight up brutal or violent. Most of the humor derives from how these clones are huge departures from their historical counterparts, and yet they seamlessly blend with the high school archetypes. Lincoln is an awkward nerd, Joan of Arc is an edgy free-speaking mind, Gandhi is a party animal, Cleopatra is self-centered and obsessed with her image, and JFK is a horny, arrogant jock. But then you get bizarre depictions. George Washington Carver has a peanut sidekick, Marie Curie is grotesque but shy, Vincent van Gogh is a paranoid loner, and Genghis Khan is... The overall design was inspired by UPA, a former animation company known for its limited budget. It's an art style that I immediately fell in love with when I first saw it, with characters that have misshapen bodies, backgrounds with unique color palettes, and shapes that bleed outside the outlines. I also appreciate the subtle visual gags in the show, such as nods to actual historical counterparts and hidden dolphin appearances. The main draw of Clone High is the drama surrounding the love triangle between Abe, Cleopatra, and Joan. Abe is oblivious to Joan's feelings for him, while Cleo takes advantage of Abe's generous nature, all of which will culminate in a two-part season finale. The show ends with the characters being frozen by sinister board members. A pretty impactful conclusion, but more impactful was the show's cancellation. Many Indian people were insulted by Gandhi's portrayal and threatened to revoke MTV's license unless Clone High was taken off the air. The Simpsons also faced a similar issue with its Indian character. Despite the heavy cliffhanger, the show gained a strong fan base. In July 2020, a continuation was announced with the creators on board, finally premiering on HBO Max, or just Max, on May 23, 2023. The third season had just premiered on February 1st, 2024. After being unfrozen, the clones, along with new faces, had to face the modern society. People online have mixed feelings about this revival, especially since Gandhi isn't around, but I have yet to see the revival in full. As for the original series, it was a fun time. It's a show that can be silly, but also heartfelt and emotional. I may not be a die-hard fan of Clone High, but I can definitely say
I love Clone High.
Good, good. Here's a sweet tart.
Even though I still hold a special place for Beavis and Butthead and the first 9 seasons of The Simpsons, I found these shows to be enjoyable. Well, most of them anyway. I've seen interviews with these people that explain the struggles and reality of primetime animated shows. Personally, I understand why some of these shows were canned so early, either due to poor network treatment, being products of their time, or trying to cash in the Simpsons' success without understanding what made that show special or work.
It's like they saw our lives and put it right up on screen.
That said, these shows prove that adult shows didn't need to be raunchy or swear constantly to get attention. They could be compelling, relatable, or creative. To this day, there are still shows that understand this philosophy. Given that standards have changed over time, stuff like The Critic or Spy Groove probably wouldn't be able to work as well in the modern era. But in today's world, bringing back shows, I suppose anything is possible. Anyway, here's how I rank all the shows I've watched, from best to worst. The Oblongs, Clone High, Mission Hill, Clerks Animated, The Critic, Spy Groove, and Family Dog. I'd say the ones that did their own thing, rather than copy, were some of the highlights. I'm aware there are other shows I missed, so let me know in the comments and I might review them some other time. If there's one thing to take away from this review, is that animation is not just for kids. It's a medium that can be enjoyed by everyone. I'm AJ Pearson, and speaking of animated shows for a certain demographic, let's just say the next review is something that I've been looking forward to doing for a long time. Anyway, thanks for watching.
Did you see a blue puppy? No, but I heard a blue puppy.
Blue's Clues is next on Nick Jr.
Where I play to learn.